Welcome to the 2022 Post-Legislative Roadshow for the Federal Programs Update on Esser and ESEA. My name is Karen C., and I am Superintendent Ibarra's Director of Federal Programs. Before I begin with this year's overview, I just want to acknowledge where we were this time last year. Last year, during the post-leg tour, less than half of the CARES Act Esser 1 funds had been drawn down. Since then, all LEAs have submitted a safe return to in-person instruction plan and have calendared a review of this plan every 6 months. All LEAs have written an LEA ARP Esser use of funds plan, and each of you has yours posted on your website. This time last year, LEAs barely had access to the Cfsga Act Esser 2 funds and the ARP Esser 3 funds. ARP Esser was just another fund in the future. The maintenance of equity requirement was introduced during this forum last year. Business managers have just recently submitted this information, and every district's compliance status is posted on the SDE website. Capital expenditure forms had just been put into place, and I remember being asked the time frame turnaround, to which I responded about 24 hours. That has not been the case since. Just a reminder, the Esser funds are used to prevent, prepare for, or respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. The U.S. Department of Ed has published a very broad interpretation of this purpose, and this includes any need or pre-existing challenge prior to COVID that the district now wants to address post-COVID. The other two requirements for Esser expenditures include that the request must fit into one of the 20 allowable activities, and the expenditure must be necessary and reasonable. We have learned that under the Uniform Grant Guidance, no personal use items are allowed. As of the end of March, more than 98% of the CARES Act Esser 1 flow-through funds have been expended, leaving a balance of just over $600,000. There is a little over $800,000 left to spend in the Learning Management Blended Learning bucket and $250,000 in the Social Emotional Learning Fund. Districts have 5 months until September 30th of this year to expend these funds. Any funds not expended by then will revert to the U.S. Department of Ed. A little more than half of the Cfsga Act Esser 2 flow-through and state set-aside funds are left. I did not make a slide for the ARP Esser 3 funds, as requests for those funds are just beginning. Completing the annual data collection report is a heavy lift, but we do have a plan. Esser final and approved reporting requirements were published February 9th, 2022. Using ARP Esser administrative funds, we are hiring and have hired actually a federal programs data and reporting coordinator. The superintendent was instrumental in successfully obtaining approval from the legislature for these funds. We are in the process of developing a survey that LEAs will use to submit their data to the SDE. Training will be provided by April 20th, and technical assistance support will be ongoing. This is a schedule that the U.S. Department of Ed has provided states, and you can see that reporting requirements will continue. The 5th annual report will be for the period July 1, 2024 to June 30th, 2025. The Esser annual performance report this year is due to U.S. Ed on July 1. The timeline has been updated since the March 2nd IASBO training at the Riverside Hotel. The survey will be released to LEAs this month on April 20th, and LEAs will have through May 30th to enter the data into the survey tool and submit to the SDE. We will compile this data, conduct a quality control check, and submit Idaho's Esser data collection to U.S. Ed on July 1. So what kind of data is U.S. Ed collecting? This is a very high-level overview to give you a broad idea of the data needed for the collection period, October 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. So this is a look back. There are 5 sections of the data collection: a CARES Act section, a Cfsga Act section, an ARP Esser section, a Cross Act section, which is across all the Essers, and a Schools section. Again, the period is October 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. So for example, the USED is interested in the total amount expended by LEA during that period for GRA-like categories in several activities. And those activities include addressing physical health and safety, meeting students' academic, social, emotional needs, mental health supports for students and staff, and operational continuity. The data collection also includes the remaining dollar amount of funds as of June 30th, 2021 for Esser 1 and Esser 2. The percent of remaining funds planned for in 5 categories is another section, and then another section is learning loss for additional information on activities and interventions. The Cross-Act section is the largest of the data collection sections, and one of the data collections is to obtain in 5 points of time the number of FTEs an LEA has. So those 5 points of time include September 30th, 2018, September 30th, 2019, March 13th, 2020, September 30th, 2020, and September 30th, 2021. We did reach out to the USED about the March 13th, 2020 FTE position collection and told them that Idaho does not collect that information on March 13th, and so we will be pre-filling that part of the data collection with zeros. The Cross-Act section also includes activities by 14 subpopulations for 7 different activities. The dollar amount expended, and we did clarify that expended means reimbursed during the data collection period October 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. So the amount expended for staff across all Esser funds by 9 positions, a number count of enrollment by 14 demographic subgroups, and a number count of FTEs by 4 staff types. So why is this data submission important? A Dear Colleague letter from USED on February 9th identified state expectations for reporting. USED expects that 98% of the LEAs will successfully submit to the SEA, and that 98% of the Esser funds awarded to Idaho will be accounted for in the submission. USED has said that they will not accept a state submission that does not meet these 2 requirements. They are fully prepared to enforce these requirements by either placing special conditions on grant awards or initiating actions to withhold, suspend, or terminate a state's remaining Esser funds. Another condition of receiving the Esser funds is the requirement for monitoring. The superintendent provided assurance to USED that Idaho would meet all federal requirements. And when the grant award notice was provided to each LEA, in accepting that, LEAs are assuring also that they will meet all Esser requirements. That includes not only the data collection, but monitoring. Monitoring will consist of a fiscal section similar to ESEA and a program section that tracks baseline measures and outcome data 3 times a year on interventions to address the academic impact of lost instructional time and interventions to address social, emotional, and mental health needs of students. Data from the program tracking will be collected annually. Now let's transition to the ARPA State Fiscal Recovery Funds. The Senate Bill 1404 is a fund allocated to the governor's office from the Department of Treasury and distributed by the superintendent's office. This is almost $37 million for the current fiscal year. The gross amount of this fund is to provide staff $1,000 plus 19.59% for benefits for each actual full-time equivalent position as of February 15th, 2022 payment upload. You'll notice that there are 3 separate GRA allocations, funds of which must be tracked separately. The intent of this fund is to provide all FTE instructional and pupil service staff, all FTE classified staff, and all FTE administrator staff this $1,000 in premium pay. The operative word here is all. The intent of this bonus or stipend is to allocate in an equitable manner across all staff for each category. You will notice that the GRA request for reimbursement must include the FTP count in the notes section of the GRA request, and GRA reimbursement requests must be made by June 15th of this year. In a separate bill, and this is House Bill 793, which is another Arpa State Fiscal Recovery Fund awarded to the Governor's Office and administered by the Superintendent's Office, and this fund is called Additional Compensation. This is a little more than $36 million and is a fund for the next fiscal year. This is one GRA allocation, and it is an allocation for all FTE instructional and pupil services staff for salaries and benefits. Again, each GRA request for reimbursement must include the FTP count in the notes section of the GRA request, and these reimbursement requests must be made by June 15th, 2023. The goal is to get these funds in the GRA by August. So what other important information do you need to know about Esser and ESE? Now more than ever, with the influx of the Esser monies, there is a spotlight on fraud prevention. If you know of or suspect fraud, waste, abuse, mismanagement, or violations of laws and regulations involving the U.S. Department of Education funds, please notify the Office of Inspector General immediately at the link on this site. Resources for Esser can be found from the main page of the SDE by clicking on Menu, Federal Programs, and then Pandemic Relief Funds. Cfsga Workshops are coming up. I encourage all superintendents to support their business managers and federal program directors to attend this year's Cfsga Workshop. This will be the first time since 2019 that we will hold them in person. We have some new team members in federal programs, and this will be an opportunity to put a face to a name. The Cfsga Workshops provide work time and networking time to ask questions of staff. Shifting away from Esser, but to ESEA, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, Idaho is preparing to submit a one-year COVID-19 addendum to the ESEA Consolidated State Plan. Any changes we want to continue next year must be made by submitting a separate ESEA amendment next year. All proposed changes in the addendum reflect the goal to identify schools most affected by the COVID-19 disruptions while considering the human and financial resources that are available. There are two reasons why you might care about this one-year addendum. If you currently have a CSI underperforming upschool, then these changes will impact the exiting of these schools. The changes will also impact which schools are identified in late summer, early fall of 2022. Comments submitted during the public comment period were all in favor or neutral about the proposed changes. Briefly, one of the proposed changes has to do with exiting current CSI up schools. And states do have more flexibility in the methodologies used for exiting schools than for identifying schools. To exit schools, proficiency data from 2021 and 2022 will be used to exit these CSI up schools. We will use 2021 proficiency data when it helps the school. This is the safe harbor idea. Preliminary data indicate that several CSI up schools made progress in 2021 and are closing the achievement gap compared to non-CSI schools. We want to capture these gains by using the 2021 data, again, when it benefits the school. The growth calculation will include data from 2019 to 2021 and from 2021 to 2022. You may remember that to exit improvement, a CSI up school must, number one, no longer have an overall composite that is in the bottom 5% of all schools, and two, have proficiency levels in the 20th percentile or above in both math and English language arts ISAT. We are proposing in this addendum that schools meet proficiency levels in the 10th percentile or above in both math and ELA ISAT. Identifying a new cohort of schools is also part of the revision of this one-year addendum. Schools we are proposing will be identified for improvement based on data from the 3 most recent years. Those 3 most recent years of proficiency data would be 2022, 2021, and 2020. However, Idaho did not implement ISAT in 2020, so we cannot use 2020. Idaho had an approved waiver to waive the participation requirement in 2021, so we are not using 2021 data to calculate proficiency. This means proficiency data from 2022 will be used to identify schools in the fall. USAID did share that most states are using 2022 data only. This will ensure we capture the schools most affected by COVID-19 disruption. Growth will be calculated from 2019 to 2021 and from 2021 to 2022. Growth is based on scale scores, which do not need to be adjusted based on participation rates below 95%. So for this reason, 2021 data may be used. In the addendum, we are also proposing that ATSI schools be identified from the pool of TSI schools rather than from the pool of all schools. So these are your Esser main contacts. Right now, Lisa English, Alexandra McCann, and myself. Please reach out anytime you have a question or need some information. We are here to support you.